If you've ever considered growing your own herbs and vegetables, you are in the right place. Today, we're gonna go over the basics of everything you need to start a successful vegetable and herb garden. In this chapter, we're gonna talk about how much sun you need, how to water, and the different types of soil for your garden. When you're looking for the best place to situate your garden, in your yard, on your balcony, you want a place that gets at least 6 to 8 hours of sunshine. This is something that people get wrong all the time, but it is so important. Sunshine is essential to a successful garden. And you'll have to spend some time in your yard and observe this. Look at where the sun is coming up in the morning. For me, it's behind me. This is the east, and it sets in the west. And you want to follow the path of the sun in your yard and see what area is in sun for at least a minimum of 6 hours. If you pick a spot in your yard or on your porch that gets less than 6 hours of sunshine, your plants won't grow as robust, won't produce as much fruit or vegetables. So now that you've found the best place in your yard or on your balcony or porch that gets 6 to 8 hours of sunshine, let's talk about soil. Soil is extremely important for your garden. It is the medium or the matrix that holds the nutrients that are gonna be feeding your plants. Depending on what you are growing in, you might be growing in some pots, on your porch, on your balcony. You can definitely use bigger pots, or if you're growing in a raised bed, like this one here, or are you growing in the ground? All that is gonna determine the type of soil that you're gonna use. So let's start off with growing in pots. It's really important to use a potting soil or a potting mix. That's what it would say at your local box store, your garden center store. So potting soil is a mix of a bunch of different organic materials that are loose, airy, holds water really well, and has lots of nutrients already added to it. It doesn't have any actual dirt in it, so you wouldn't find clay or anything like that. It has some broken down wood chips. These white little balls are called perlite. It's like a rock material. It keeps it light and fluffy and keeps it from compacting. And then you might have some peat moss, just a bunch of different organic elements that keeps it nice and fluffy. Like, it's really hard to compact this. You see how you try to squeeze it together, but it still falls apart? That means it's not going to be compacting in your container. So this is what you need for your container garden. Now we have the basics of planting in a pot. The next option up is planting in a raised bed like this. So now let's talk about that. A raised bed is a really great way to kind of contain your garden and the soil, and you don't have to worry about weeds, and you're actually starting off with a really great foundation because you're adding the soil. And you want at least 8 inches of depth, and make sure that it's no wider than 4 feet wide, because then it's gonna be very hard to work and reach over. This is about 2 feet wide, and in terms of length, it can be long. At the other side of my farm, I've got raised beds. Some of my raised beds are 90 feet long, but they're 3 feet wide. Another important thing is, what soil are you going to fill this raised bed with? You can use compost. I like mushroom compost. That's something that's readily available around here, but any type of finished organic compost that you can find in your local garden store, you can use to fill your raised beds. You can also use raised bed mix. So there are raised bed mixes, so it will say raised bed mix. You can use that for your raised bed. You can also use garden soil. So those are the 3 options that you would find at your local garden store, garden center, and you can use those to fill your raised beds. Now, compost might be a confusing word because you're thinking, well, wait a minute. You might be composting at home and it's all those kitchen scraps. That is raw compost. That's what compost starts off as. The compost that you're gonna be filling your bed with is finished compost. And that's what you find, that's what's in here. This is a big wheelbarrow of organic mushroom compost that I source locally from a supplier. And that's what's in this bag right here. So what you're gonna buy at the store is always gonna be finished compost. So now we are ready to fill our raised beds, right? So I've got a really great trick, and that is by using wood chips. These are just ground up trees. The great thing about having wood chips at the bottom of your bed, it helps the container to drain well. This will eventually break down and feed your plants from the bottom as well. You wanna make sure that the space you leave in your raised bed for your soil is 6 to 8 inches. So if your bed is only 8 inches, you're gonna have to fill that all the way up with soil. If your bed is 12 inches, you can do half wood chips, half soil. So 6 to 8 inches you want for soil, and then the rest you can fill up with the wood chips. And that's what we've done here. We filled this up halfway with wood chips, and now I'm just gonna top it off with this compost, which is the soil that we're using for the raised bed. When I fill up my raised beds, I like to fill it to the top. When you're digging it and filling it, you're kind of like, it's gonna be light and airy because you're kind of scooping it in, but as it rains, as you water, that'll just kind of like make everything settle and it comp back down a little bit. This is an easy thing to remember, right? 6 to 8 hours of sunshine, 6 to 8 inches of soil. You're gonna get a lot of farm muscles, okay, doing this. So we've talked about planting in pots, raised bed. Let's talk about planting in the ground. There are a couple of things that you're gonna need to do to prep your ground for planting. So I'm gonna step over here and just kind of move this wheelbarrow out of the way and show you guys what I'm talking about. So you find a place in your yard and you're like, this is where I want my garden. We don't wanna just put soil on top of the grass, the weeds, or anything like that. We wanna remove that. I'm gonna grab a shovel. And you can kind of mark off your area and manually remove the grass and the weeds. And you do that by digging about 2 to 3 inches into the ground. And what we're trying to do is pull up this mat. So this has all of the roots of the grass and the weeds. You're gonna do that for the area that you're planning to plant in. Remember, you'll be doing this over a larger area. This is just demonstration. You wanna add 2 to 3 inches of compost on top, and you're just gonna kind of mix it into your soil to about 6-inch depth. And we're just doing that, and you do that over an area. So the last thing I wanna talk to you about is the third key element to gardening, and that is water. Water is what plants use to bring the nutrients up from the soil into their stems, into their leaves, and that's how the nutrient gets to the plants, and that's how they grow big, strong, healthy, and you get the harvest that you're looking for. So when you're setting up your garden, especially when you're getting your seeds in, when you're getting your plants in for the first time, you really wanna soak the soil until it's moist into the soil and up to the surface of the plant, right? When you're watering, you see it kind of like nice and glossy. You don't want it to pond on top or anything like that. The water is infiltrating. I'm gonna take my gloves off for this so you guys can see how we check to make sure you have enough water, right? So we go up in here and it's nice and moist. If your hand is coming out and there's dirt kind of stuck on it, 6 to 8 inches in here, like this is nice and saturated soil. And so the plant roots have water and they're gonna reach down for that water. After that, you want to just make sure the top inch of the soil is still moist. You don't want it to dry out all the way and then you water, your plants are gonna struggle. And you would water maybe about once to twice a week, depending on the time of the season. When you are using a hose, we want to use a light shower, right? This hose right here has a nozzle that adjusts, all right? So I'm gonna show you what, we don't want that, right? That is too much pressure. If you have seeds, they're gonna fly out, or they're gonna float to the top, or you might even bury them deeper. We don't want that. Think about when it rains. It's a light dispersed shower. Even in a heavy rain, it's still single raindrops coming from the top. So if you have a nozzle with different names on it, it'll say shower or mist, if you just want a light mist. So this one, I just want a light shower, and that just kind of like behaves like a nice rainfall over your plants, and you're not beating them down, okay? So once we get into specific plants, we'll talk more in depth about the watering needs for each plant. Some plants like the surface to dry out a little bit and then you water. Some plants like the surface to always be a little bit moist. So in this chapter, we've talked about the 3 important elements to a successful garden. Remember, we need at least 6 to 8 hours of sunshine. We want 6 inches of depth of soil, and last but not least, heavily water in your transplants and your seeds initially, and then you only need to water 1 to twice a week ongoing to keep your plants happy and have a beautiful harvest. Happy growing.